All right, welcome back, Sierra. February 1st, we talked about in our first episode that got a hectic morning for me today. So, and that's part of being a landlord. So, I want to kind of just throw this out there how, you got to just deal with things and kind of roll with it. So, welcome back, Sierra.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I am excited to dig into the process that you do to handle all of your requests now that you have like all of these out-of-state rentals and you're trying to kind of resituate how you do property management. So I'm ready to hear these stories.
Yeah, so I can see why some people don't want to deal with it and they are willing to pay, 8 to 10% maybe per property. But so I still am using a property manager on many of my properties, but I did kind of want to dabble my feet in the waters and see if self-managing from a distance is possible and, if I can save money or what are the kind of struggles you may encounter so that I can help my audience and tell them that I would never do it or I would do it. But yeah, so I am using Hemlane as a kind of a hybrid property management software for, kind of communications, financials. I was using it for maintenance requests and I just kind of changed to a different tier because I'm going to kind of use my own maintenance coordination. And of course, the first day I switch, I'm getting messages first thing in the morning about water tank leaking. So that's where we're at right now. And yeah, so anything else, any other information you might want before I get into this?
Yeah, so I would love to hear what the new setup is. Like you downgraded a tier, and so you have your own team that's going to help you with maintenance requests.
Yes, I actually downgraded all the way from the complete, which would be the highest, where you have access to the vendors that Hemlane does use. You can also use your own, but I downgraded from the complete to the essentials, where you they do still provide maintenance coordination, but you also can use yours. But I've now downgraded even further to the basic, and I am also working. I've kind of maybe formed my own hybrid system where I'm working with kind of a team in Pittsburgh where I'm going to pretty much be using their 24/7 maintenance resources. And of course, the first day I kind of downgraded, I get a message at 4 o'clock in the morning Hawaii time about a water tank leaking. So now basically the tenant is able to submit a request through Hemlane, but nothing on Hemlane's side is being done as far as sending out a maintenance team or even troubleshooting. So that is all gone on the basic package. So now basically I just get a request and now I do have a 24/7 number. I just never had a chance to relay it to the tenant because I just downgraded in the system. So I did message the tenant to say, "Hey, I just switched over to something. This is going to be your new, 24/7 emergency contact number." So we're still trying to figure out the kinks, but basically, I'm using Hemlane now more for kind of the financials, maintenance. I mean, yeah, communication between the tenant. But as far as maintenance and even leasing, I'm going to use like a property management company where we're kind of worked out the fees and kind of how we're going to implement this.
So tell me how you found the person that you're going to do this with, the property manager that's going to kind of handle um the maintenance like fulfillment here.
So for me, it's just networking. I wouldn't advise doing something like this. Maybe if you were to first get started in your out of state or remote investing journey, I think you have to build relationships and, maybe find out who you want to work with or whatnot. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't do this if this was my first few properties out of state. So I've had these properties for let's see now, maybe going over 2 years now. So I've built relationships over time and I've connected with this one person. I joke about it. I call him kind of like Yoda. He's this older gentleman, who's kind of a all in one. He's a broker, he's an investor. Um, they have property management side. They have his son-in-law does the contracting side. So they kind of have the full service. And we kind of building this relationship of working together. And I said, hey, let's try work something out so that if other investors want to invest in Pittsburgh that I work with, I can say that I use you or I have this kind of knowledge of what you provide. Because before this, it's kind of hard for me to recommend him, even though I felt strongly about it. It was kind of like I didn't have actual proof where I was doing any business with him as far as him managing my properties or helping me in any way. So now that we have this relationship, it's a lot easier for me to recommend him or see how his systems work. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome to really see it out for yourself before recommending someone, like vouching for them. So I think that's really wise to do. Uh, and the power of networking obviously is so important. And I've heard that a lot about investing out of state. And, that's not something that we've done yet, but building your team where you're going to be investing is really important. Do you feel like it's having a team in Pittsburgh is necessary, even if you were still using the Himlane like complete package?
Um, yeah, I think in some ways you still want um a team or boots on the ground. It just makes it a lot easier because even when I was on the complete package, I wouldn't always use the vendors that they you may have access to. It was kind of
Hmm.
I wanted those vendors more for like a emergency or where maybe I couldn't get in contact with a certain person. So it's kind of like a fallback option for me. So
Okay.
even though I would get certain maintenance requests and Hemlane would say, okay, we have this and we can send so and so out. A lot of times I would be like, you know what, let's hold that. I'm gonna reach out to my boots in the ground and see if they can get someone out there first and then we'll see if I need to send out one of the vendors that Hemlane may have contact with. So a lot of times I was sending out my own people anyways. So after I felt comfortable with that, that's kind of why I stepped down from the complete to the essential because I felt
Hmm.
like I didn't need those vendors anymore. So that was kind of the first step. I went from the complete to the essential, and that's kind of where Alex from Deacon Hoover and Mace Management. That's how I kind of implemented them to be part of my maintenance service. And then now we worked out even more to get more like 24/7 maintenance requests because initially that was kind of why I wanted the like essential where they offered that 24/7
Hmm.
maintenance request. So I kind of wanted that in place. And now that Alex and I kind of worked out even more streamlined things, I'm all the way down to the basic now, and I still have 24/7, kind of emergency, but that's through a direct number through Alex's company now.
Okay, I was gonna ask that. The 24/7 number goes to him or his
Their
company.
company, not yeah, not him, but whatever. Like if you were to have management through his traditional management through his property management company, that emergency number is now I provide to my tenants through Hemlane.
Okay, so then, I mean, I used Himlane for almost a year and know that it's, if you're on the basic package, you can advertise the property on there. You're going to have the log for the communication between you and the tenant, and then you'll have the log of the maintenance requests, and then you can collect rent and have your financials on there. What would you say is the main reason that you're keeping that basic package with Himlane rather than just switching them to baseline to collect rent? Um, is it just for that communication between you and the tenant?
Yeah, it's more for the communication, and I guess it does, provide some buffer or anonymity between me and the tenant where they're not directly contacting, my cell phone or whatnot.
Hmm.
So it's kind of for that for the records, and like you're saying. I haven't used it, and yes, you still have that leasing feature. It's more I I don't know. I just didn't feel comfortable using it. And maybe I should have just to test the waters, but it was kind of like uh, I was always just worried about someone squatting in the place, because someone could view it themselves. There'd be a lockbox with access code,
Hmm.
and I'm like, what, you know,
Yeah,
what's gonna,
what's stopping someone from
yeah,
just getting in and staying? Yeah.
yeah. So that was always part of my concern. And so now that I've worked something out with Alex, they're gonna be leasing properties for me whenever they become vacant. So that was part of the reason why I kind of slowly transitioned to the lower tiers on Hemling, because I think it's a great platform. I mean, I think it's super, user friendly. I like what it offers. However, they are increasing the prices and whatnot. So I think also what price point your rental properties are is a big
Mhm.
factor too. So it kind of depends how much rent you're collecting. So I think like, if you were living in Tennessee and you had properties in Hawaii where a lot of times the rent, because, might be like $4,000 a month, paying the fees that Hemling's collecting, it's not going to
Yeah, it's a
affect you as
smaller
much.
percentage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's something, a big factor is how much rent you're actually collecting. Because I can see someone who's their rental income per property is in that, maybe 750 price range. It's like, man, it's almost as much as paying a property manager to self-manage it. And now you got all this extra work on your plate. So I think that's how you have to look at it. And I mean, I enjoy it, but I definitely see how a lot of people are not going to want to deal with it. And, not everyone is up at, you know, 4 in the morning in Hawaii or whatever time zone they're in. So a lot of times, that message that came in for me, I was up already, but there's a lot of
Right.
people that I don't know if they'd want to wake up and first thing in the morning they look and they see all these messages from the tenants say, oh, the water's leaking. And then I had another one that the tenants like, oh, I submitted a payment, but can you cancel it because it's the wrong bank account? And now you have like multiple things you're trying to deal with first thing in the morning. And if you're someone that kind of usually just gets up and gets ready to go to work, now you're like scrambling around trying to deal with these other issues. So I think it just depends too. But I enjoy it so far, but I definitely see how most people are not going to want to deal with it.
Yeah, being in the same time zone as your tenant is definitely something that I don't think many people think about, but is important.
Yeah.
I guess to wrap this up, I'd like to ask, like, what's your mindset going into, when these requests pop up? Like, do you feel anxious about having to deal with them, or like, how do you deal with that and not let it kind of derail uh your process?
you know, and I think people are starting to pick up on it, but a lot of things don't necessarily bother me a lot of times. So I think maybe I am the outlier. A lot of people, it might bother them or they might stress out about it. For me, I just kind of roll with it. I think maybe that's part of it is, being in the fire service too. A lot of times, you have to stay calm. The more anxious you get or the more nervous you get, a lot of times that's going to cause more problems, right? And so for me, a lot of times, just we have a problem, there's a situation, and at the end of the day, you gotta figure it out, right? There's a solution to it, and getting worked up about it is not gonna probably make it any easier. You're probably gonna cause yourself a lot more stress and headache. So for me, you get a message, you get a request, and it's like, all right, well, it is what it is. That's part of having, you know, real estate or being a landlord, and you just figure it out. And at the end of the day, you pretty much make one call, right? I make one call or email to my boots in the ground or a vendor, and
Hmm.
now it's off your plate pretty much, right? But it's pretty much just you kind of got to realize that it comes with the business, and you just figure it out.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I would say you're an outlier as far as
Yeah.
that goes
No,
to go with
yeah.
the flow like that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't want to. I guess maybe your first few times, of course, it's maybe stressful. You're gonna get your first
Mhm.
maintenance request, and you're just like, oh, see, this is all the stuff people tell me why not to invest in real estate, and I've
Right.
made all these mistakes, and then it may seem bad, right? I mean, your first request might be like, oh, water's leaking somewhere, and then you're like panicking and you're stressing, and like, all these bad scenarios are going through your head, and then yeah, at the end of the day, it's just something need to be, tightened up, or it could have been something minor. And,
Hmm.
and you realize a lot of times, like a lot of times it's, the tenant too, right? A lot of times they're panicking a little bit. So their message may seem very urgent. Like, oh, this is happening. But then, when things kind of calm down, then you realize it's just a minor issue, or something that can be taken care of a lot of times. And it's usually not as bad as what that first initial maybe message or request might be.
Yeah. We had something like that recently where our tenants messaged us that the HVAC unit outside had was kind of freezing over, like it was icing over. And of course it was like sleeting outside. It was freezing temperatures. And in their initial message it said, this is got some ice on it. But don't worry, like we have some space heaters. So we thought, that the unit was not blowing hot air and that they, felt, comfortable using their electric heaters inside the house until we were able to get it repaired. And then when we got there, of course, there was no ice. Like the temperature had already warmed up, like it melted off. And I think the defrost function just wasn't kicking in on the heat pump. And I was like, well, did the temperature drop in the house? And they said that they had it set at 70 and it was 68 in the house. And of course, this is like, in 20-degree weather. So a 2-degree drop inside of the house is not too big of a deal. And so I was like, well, did it blow hot air? And they were like, oh yeah, it was fine. I'm like, why did you put that you were like had your space heaters out? Like I thought it made me think that it was failing. And then we get there and we realize that, it was fine. And it was just kind of like the perfect conditions of, the temperatures outside and the weather and all of it to kind of make that happen, which in Tennessee, it might be 1 week out of the whole year that you're getting weather like that. So anyways, it definitely vouches for that the initial message from the tenants can be
Yeah.
a little bit more dramatic than the situation always is.
Yeah. But yeah, but I said too, right? Is a lot of times when you first become a landlord, those even if you have a property manager, like I
Mhm.
noticed, those first messages that they sent me, like, oh, okay, we have this issue that came up, today. Those first, they are kind of, you're like, oh, okay, what do I
Yeah.
do, or what, and it kind of gets you on your toes, and you're kind of like, oh, see, this is why people tell me not to invest in real estate and all these mistakes. And at the end of the day, a lot of times it's very minor, or there's some sort of solution to it. And and I look at it too, even if you just were owning your own home, you had your own primary
Yeah.
residence, and something came up, right? Yeah, it's stressful, but at the end of the day, you have to figure it out, and there usually is a solution. And yes, sometimes it is money that you may not want to spend, but at the end of the day, it's usually, it has to get done, right? And or it's going to get done
Mhm.
at some point, right? So
Right.
but yeah, yeah, I definitely that first one is definitely kind of challenging. But yes, I agree, and I don't want to make it sound easy. I know I'm an outlier. I always tell people that a lot of times, and I guess maybe my advice is, if you do get that message or request, is just maybe don't address it. Give it a few minutes. Kind of just sit back and really, calm yourself down. And before
Hmm.
you start, messaging 100 people, like, hey, what do I do? Or who do I send out? And let's check this. And, kind of just take it, sit down, kind of, look at the whole situation, and usually it figures itself out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really good advice to take a minute to step back
Yeah.
and
See,
then
I was
deal with
I
it
I was
with
more
the whole
stressed
thing.
today because I had a call with Sierra. So I'm like I had a Zoom call to get on. So it wasn't so much just the maintenance requests, But I found it funny that the first day basically that I kind of implement this new system to take care of these situations is, the tenant messages me. So that's why I even joked with the tenant when he messaged me. I was like, oh, I think you're just messing with me because, I implemented this new system. I didn't even give him the new number to contact yet. And
Uh-huh.
so, yeah, but it looks like everything's going to be resolved. And yeah, I mean, it looks like a new water heater is going to be needed, but it is what it is. And, at some point, it probably could have been worse. Hopefully, maybe, at least he was home, right? Or, and it
Yeah.
wasn't something that was leaking and then he was gone on a trip and he comes
Right.
back. So, it could always be worse. So you got to always look at the positives and, yeah, but I am an outlier. I know that.
It shows how your mindset is really being practically implemented in these situations. So hopefully that is a good example for people to model after.
Yeah, learn from my mistakes and just like I said, it'll be worth it. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is just kind of realize that there's a solution and it'll figure itself out.
All right. Well, hopefully next week when we talk, there's been no other maintenance issues.
You just jinxed me now. So now we're gonna have a lot to talk about probably next week, but yeah, hopefully it's not 4 in the morning and then I'm scrambling around trying to message people and then worry about leaving you waiting for me on Zoom. So,
Oh yeah, that 5 minute delay. Just kidding.
but
I
I'm,
got
I'm
things
good.
to do, Mark.
Well, look at you. You're in your car, you're probably ready to go somewhere, or I don't know. It looks cold today out there, though.
It is cold. No,
Oh
I
yeah.
I'm sure I will get my kid's probably gonna get in the car here in a minute. But yep. It's
All
just
right. What do you
another
mean? You
weekday.
made your kid wait outside while you're doing this?
No, he was
Oh,
inside.
oh, okay. All right. Well, yeah. Thanks for doing this, and we'll do it again next week.
All right, sounds
All
good.
right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.